Tom Laughlin lost everything but still lived like a hero, Billy Jack. Imagine building a fortune, losing it, and then deciding the answer isn't to quit, it's to start another fight. That's basically Tom Laughlin's life. And the strangest part is that Billy Jack wasn't just a movie character. In many ways, it was the man himself. I think that's what makes Laughlin's story so hard to forget. Because when most people hear the name Tom Laughlin, they probably picture the hat, the beard, and that quiet, intimidating man from Billy Jack. But long before Billy Jack became a cultural icon, Laughlin was already proving he had a problem with being told what he could and couldn't do. He was born in Milwaukee in 1931, and even as a young man, he had a reputation for pushing against authority. At Marquette University, his temper eventually got him expelled after a fight. You'd think that would have been the moment his future started falling apart. Instead, it pushed him toward acting. After seeing A Streetcar Named Desire, something clicked. He discovered theater, formed his own stock company, and eventually studied radio, acting, directing, and producing at the University of South Dakota. And that's where he met Dolores Taylor. She wasn't simply the woman who would become Mrs. Tom Laughlin. She became his partner in practically everything. They married in 1954, and that same year, Laughlin wrote the original screenplay that would eventually become Billy Jack. Think about that. The movie that would define his life was sitting inside his head nearly 2 decades before audiences saw it. But here's the part one find almost unbelievable. Before Billy Jack made him rich, Laughlin had already built, and lost, something enormous. In 1959, he and Dolores opened a Montessori preschool in Santa Monica. By 1964, it had reportedly become the largest Montessori school in the United States. Time magazine even profiled it. Then, just 1 year later, it went bankrupt. Gone. For most people, that might have been the end of the dream. For Laughlin, it almost seemed to have the opposite effect. He went back into filmmaking. And in 1967, he created The Born Losers. That movie introduced audiences to a character who would eventually become Billy Jack, a half-Navajo former Green Beret who stood between vulnerable people and violent men. Audiences remembered him. Laughlin noticed. Then came Billy Jack. And this is where his career gets almost unbelievable. A studio wanted changes to the movie. Less politics. Less controversy. Cuts that Laughlin didn't want. So instead of simply accepting the edits, he withheld the sound reels. His own movie couldn't even be released normally without him. I have to admit, that's an insane level of stubbornness. But it worked. Eventually, Billy Jack found another path to audiences, and Laughlin later re-released the film himself. The result was enormous. The movie became a phenomenon and turned Laughlin into a very wealthy independent filmmaker. But money didn't make him calmer. If anything, it made him more determined to control his own work. He fought distributors. He challenged Hollywood. He spent huge amounts of energy trying to create a system where independent filmmakers could control how their movies reached audiences. And sometimes he won. Sometimes he absolutely didn't. The Trial of Billy Jack became a major commercial success in 1974, despite critics attacking its politics and style. But by the late 1970s, things were changing. His later projects struggled with distribution. Then came perhaps the most painful failure of all. In 1985, Laughlin started filming The Return of Billy Jack. He wanted Billy Jack to return in a completely new story. But during production, Laughlin suffered a serious concussion and neck injury. The production stopped. The money disappeared. And the movie was never completed. That unfinished film became a symbol of everything happening to him. The school was gone. The money he'd made through years of independent filmmaking had been drained by projects, legal battles, and his constant attempts to control his own work. And yet, somehow, Laughlin still wasn't finished. This is the part of his life I find most fascinating. When the movie stopped working, he didn't stop trying to make a difference. He entered politics. He ran for president in 1992. Then again in 2004. He campaigned around issues including campaign finance reform and tax reform. He knew he wasn't going to suddenly move into the White House. But that almost wasn't the point. He had spent his entire career saying what he believed, whether Hollywood wanted to hear it or not. Now he was doing the same thing without a movie camera. And later, he became deeply interested in Jungian psychology. He wrote and lectured about psychology and the human mind, shifting from the physical image of Billy Jack toward questions about dreams, identity, and healing. That transition says a lot about him. The man people remembered for fighting on screen eventually became someone more interested in understanding why people struggle in the first place. Then came another battle. In 2001, Laughlin was diagnosed with tongue cancer. He continued working and speaking publicly for years afterward. He died on December 12, 2013, at 82, after complications from pneumonia. Dolores Taylor survived him by several years. She died in 2018 at 85. And when I look back at their story, I don't think the most important part is that Tom Laughlin became a millionaire. Or that he lost his fortune. It's that neither success nor failure seemed capable of changing the basic person he was. He built a school.